Chippy, of course, became and still is one of our great local Bahamian entertainers.
He's one of our cultural icons. Chippy is a king, and he's royalty and should be treated as such in this country.
My father taught my mother 1 or 2 steps because he was also a dancer before he became a drummer. He used to dance also.
Y'all remember when Chippy to tell Sean clean the skin and Sean say, "Well, you ain't cleaning no skin." Chippy say, "You disagree? You disagree you ain't cleaning no skin? Disagree this."
Every time I see my father perform, it's something special to me. I'm the only one screaming in the audience because that's Daddy. That's my father.
I had a great childhood experience, and I always brag about it to some degree because we grew up around a lot of people, because Daddy was a Junkanoo icon as such. He sort of brought a lot of people together.
At one point in your life, you consider that's my father, okay? But my dad was just always the father for everybody. He wasn't just my father, even though I knew that was my dad. He was the father to everybody.
The year 1928, Friday the 5th of October, a legend was born to the late Howard Nelson Chipman, a merchant, and the late Ethelyn Taylor, a slave. Born in the Jewel of the Caribbean, Nassau, the Bahamas, he by his own right would etch into the hearts of all those he met that he was destined to be nothing shy of greatness. For the past 6 decades, he has made mammoth contributions in the cultivation and preservation of our Bahamian culture. His love for his country would be felt as Bahamian culture was inhaled by the multitude as he traveled globally representing the Bahamas with drum in hand and national pride in heart. Although known as Bahamian royalty, he has never lost his common touch. This is the story of a cultural icon, a trailblazer, a patriarch. This is the story of John Chippy Chipman, Gander, king of the goatskin drum. Dr. Horatio Chipman voyaged from Nova Scotia to the Bahamas in 1820. He begot one son, Charles. Charles begat Howard Nelson, Chippy's father. Howard Nelson wore many hats, including merchant, real estate enterpriser, politician, and philanthropist, and undertaking his massive wealth, unified with his courteous spirit, had commissioned him. During his development of Chippingham, formerly Rainbow Village, Ethelyn Taylor caught his eye as she worked on his land. The Black beauty from Long Island became the mother of 5 of his 8 children. In a time where prejudice sashayed through the streets of Nassau, Howard Nelson's affection was unwavering towards his Ethelyn and the Black children she bore him.
My mother, Ethelyn Taylor, is from Long Island, and my daddy, Howard Nelson Chipman, is from England. And he had 5 children with my mother. The oldest boy was Howard Nelson Chipman. The second one was Alice Chipman. The third was me, the famous Chippy. And fourth was the twins, Cyril and Hubert. That was the 5 children my daddy had with my mother. My father in 1933 was the House Assembly, but he was a businessman that had 3 stores. He helped the poor people in those days. He feed the hunger, clothe the naked, and he makes sure move the colored people up to the standard of living.
I'm a retired locksmith of over 30 years. And I got to know Mr. Chipman. He lived just the western end of Fort Charlotte. The big house set quite a bit from the Bay Street, and you couldn't see the house from the road. There were a lot of trees. But he had a business on Bay Street. That's where I knew him mostly.
John was taken away at a certain age, just a young teenager, and went to live permanently with his father out west in the big house of Mr. Chipman.
In those days, there was no icebox, no Frigidaire, so my daddy bring a boatload of icebox. In those days, the women still had no bed. They used to go Blue Hill and bring a blanket full of grass for bed. My daddy then bring a boatload of it bed.
He was a merchant, and he sold dry goods, but he specialized in tennis shoes. Now, I hasten to say the tennis we're talking about are not the tennis we wear today. They were white canvas top with a kind of crepe sole. Now, his store was just opposite where Mademoiselle is now, on the southern side of Bay Street, just 2 doors west of Frederick Street. In front of his store was a double sidewalk, and he took advantage of that. His shoes, he had, I guess, hundreds of shoes, just tennis, piled up there. And you go through the pile, pick out the size you want, and I think the price was no more than 2 6 That's about 50 cents.
In those days, I used to collect £1 a week. £1 was $3. And you can go to the shop and spend $1.50 and bring a bag of grocery. Now today you better carry your land paper.
I remember John's mother, Miss Ethelyn Taylor, extremely well. As I say, I grew up just 2 houses up the street from their house.
My mother's profession was, she used to be a sales lady for my daddy. She used to have one of the shops selling the clothes. And she take good care of us. I was the whitest one in the family, so she used to send me to collect the week money from my daddy every week.
And in those days, a mother of one set of boys was mother for all the boys. She would feed us, she would take care of us, she would spank us, she would do everything. And Miss Taylor didn't fool around. She brought up her boys, and I was included in that.
Growing up in a time where racism was prevalent, Chippy experienced life on both sides of the social divide, trafficking between his father's lavish estate resting on acres of land on West Bay Street and his mother's humble abode over the hill.
We were born at 2 houses next to each other. In those days, you were born in your mother's home. And I was born and brought up and lived in a house on the corner of Hay Street and Blue Hill Road. On the other side of that corner was a gas station. Next to the gas station, 2 doors down from the gas station, was John's mother's home, Miss Ethelyn Taylor. And we knew each other from infancy. We grew up together as young boys, shooting marbles, flying kites, going to church. We did everything together. He was a good buddy of mine.
I grew up loving culture. I was a part of the Junk New Gang all the time. Me peddling out of folks, so our time was all of us gone to Western Senior School together. I was in class with all the celebrities. Me and Sir Lyndon Pindle running a 100-yard race one time. I know I was going to beat him, because he was new on the line. But he win the 100 and I run to it.
John was always an athletic person amongst all the young boys in our group. He was also always full of mischief, but mischief of the kind which saw him singing songs, making up songs about his friends to tease them and that sort of thing.
In school days, we used to get our cue from the siren, which is to blow 8:45. St. Agnes church bell is to ring at 12 o'clock. And 6 o'clock in the evening, Mr. Mason will blow the bugle from the barracks. We didn't have no watches in those days. Everybody get the cue from these. So when I ducked from school, I used to hide in St. Agnes churchyard. And I used to go and lick the bell 10 o'clock. When it's supposed to ring only 12 o'clock, and then I run in back of the churchyard and hide.
Oh yes. Boys always bragged about advantages which they had. For example, John had this beautiful sister, Alice, who unfortunately didn't stay with us beyond being in her teenage years. She went to New York to school, and from then he had an older brother, Nelson, who took care of all of them in one sense. But Nelson also went off as a teenager, went off to New York, and they all got more sophisticated training in that way. Nelson and Alice. Alice, of course, never came back to Nassau permanently. She lived in New York. She was a beautiful girl. And she came, when I said never came back, she would come really, once a year or so to see her mother, Miss Taylor. But apart from that, she stayed in New York, had family there, and brought her, lived her adult life there.
In the good old days, I was about 13 or 14, and all the people was employed at our airport, and they used to get 4 shillings a day. They call it Bohemian Road, declare war on the Conky Joe. One of the men went in the boss truck, and he found the book they were there named Getting Double. So he went and showed the book to all the men in the field. So everybody say they'll march to town to get rid of these boss and stuff.
And the problem came because the natives weren't paid on par with the Americans. And they said, well, we'll strike. And that's where the Burma Road riot came from.
And the first group passed my house with about 500 men. I figured that was all the men in the land. And I looked 5 minutes after that, another group, same size, passing, singing, we'll never let the old flag fall. So instead of being in school, I jumped in the back of that group. We went to Bay Street. Milo Butler made a speech where his statue is, and he quieted the hundreds and hundreds of men down. But there was a Coca-Cola truck parked by the court, and one of the men went and grabbed 2 Coke and smashed the first window. And it broke loose. Everybody started to broke up the town then. I run for my life then.
And they busted up businesses, houses, shops. And I remember seeing going over the hill with boats of cloth on their shoulders. They were so destructive. We had a police station and a fire truck on Market Street, and they lit that afire.
The Spanish Rail people and the Lucha people is to run the market with all the vegetable on the small boats. They leave the vegetable on the stand and loose their boat, and they fly back to their hometown. So they're breaking up Nassau. And it get quiet down when the Scotch soldiers come with the guns and stuff. Things ease down. They was breaking up over the hill too. Everybody was coming over the hill with a bolt of cloth on the shoulder, 6, 7 watches on the hand. I was right to the window peeping, and I wasn't coming out then because out there was action. The ambulance was running up and down grabbing the people who get hurt.
They were mad. They were mad, but it all came about because they were underpaid and they weren't making any headway. So they say, we'll fix them. And they fix them all right.
They say behind every good man is a good woman, and Rebecca Becky Chipman was that and more to Chippy.
My father met my mother at Prince George Wharf. Years ago, my mother's father was a fisherman and a boat builder. She grew up in Mastic Point, Andros, and he brought her to Nassau at the age of 16. And my father's father was a merchant, and he had a store downtown. So my father frequented down Bay Street quite regularly. And as my mother came to Nassau off the boat, that's where he saw her and fell in love with her. And they've been together ever since.
As a young man, I used to go on the dock and sell clothes, hang them up on the fence on the dock and sell some of my daddy clothes. And my wife was a little girl, 15 or 16, sitting on this boat. So I tell all the crew on the boat, I'll dress you all up if you talk to that little girl for me. And they talked to her, and the next day I had everybody dressed up because they had a lot of patches, 50, 60 patches, pants and patch-up shirt and stuff. So, but I had everybody dressed up the next day. And after that, I take my wife take her to the Silver Slippers, where she danced, and everybody come up the floor and watch her dance. She was so good. So I take her into the show business, and she became the best dancer in the land. I became the best drummer. And she represented the country all over the world, and I represent the country all over the world. She was in one part of the world representing the country, I was the next part. I was only one take entertainment to the Super Bowl as a Junkanoo group. Me and Becky was together for 55 years. I was with Becky for about 15, 20 years before I get married because I was scared to get married. But I was building houses. And when I done built 4 houses, I was starting to build number 5. My money ran out. So I told my wife, told Becky, lend me that money, what she got on her bank book, so I could start the next house. She said, no, you have to marry me first. So then I borrowed a ring from one of my friends, and the next day I went and paid the priest $20 and I was married. And I could have started the next house. And we had 7 children. 5 girls and 2 boys. The day between the children and the grandchildren, we had 3 Miss Bahamas. I'm scared to tell you the amount of children I got because there's plenty.
At the age of 20, Chippy's father, Howard Nelson, passed away. That happening ushered in the greatest fight of Gander's life, to regain control of his father's estate and to continue building the Chipman dynasty.
60 years, this is where my daddy buried in the same old broken grave here. My daddy was a good man of the land. He helped the poor, the sick, the crippled, the blind, feed the hunger. He served this country well. I was living in the house where he was when he was living. I was there when he died. He served this country well. My daddy had trouble sleeping, so he had one of the famous doctors come every evening and gave him a sleeping needle. So he sent with me for an extra doctor to come give him an early sleeping needle. Doctor come about, I take down there and he gave him an early needle. And when his real doctor came in the evening, he gave him a sleeping needle. Then they tell him there's two doctors gave him sleeping needle. When he heard, I said, why you didn't tell me? Say, this man will never wake no more. And that was the end of him. He never waked no more. And I went to the funeral. I was about 21, 22.
When I first realized what wealth the Chipman was worth, and I realized that it was just taken from you. It was like you never existed far as the powers to be are concerned.
I'm not certain why so much land was taken from the Chipman children, but I do believe that, the laws at the time didn't allow for illegitimate children. And also the main factor was that they were the children of Black women. So that was really an important thing. But what surprised me is that the Prime Minister, Lyndon Pinling, at the time gave my grandfather and his siblings pieces of the Chipman land, one piece, but there were many pieces of Chipman land, but he gave them each one piece of Chipman land. For me, it's strange, because if you were not entitled to any of it, then why give a piece of the land?
My daddy owned plenty land in Foxhill. Big farms he had there. As a boy, I grew up on these farms. 2 or 3 farms. And he had a big farm, Blue Hill, by the waterworks, acres of land. All people do is squat on it after he died. I should have been squatting myself, but I had a vision I should have been squatting here. Because this land is Chipman owned, this ain't the government owned. But the government take it. And the Chipman still waiting for some of it from the government.
I started getting serious with this in 2004. And I went to T.D. Jakes in, I think it was June. I started in January. And every message at that revival, it was 16,000 people in the audience, but they were talking to me. Neil Ellens came and said that his message was, I know it might sound strange. My message is coming from a Christmas message, and this is June. But you say you were born in a manger, but you were made king. See, I knew I was a king, but I was born in a manger. Paula White came back and said the same day, she said, they took your inheritance. You went through hell and fire. But you're going to come out into a better place, in a wealthier place. T.D. Jakes said, it's coming back. He said, and I took Maureen Duvalier with me, Mama. And Mama slapped me she held me and she slapped me on my thighs and she said, Mitzi, they're talking to you. And I said, Mama, I know.
But there have been attempts to reclaim Chipman land. I know for sure that my Aunt Mitzi Chipman has tried on many occasions. It hasn't been settled yet, but I am very confident as I sit here today that the Chipman land will be restored to the Chipman children. And we will live to see it. My generation will live to see it. My children will live to see it. That I am confident.
I went to the land and survey, and they showed me this map. When I saw this map, I was astonished for the land that Howard Nelson Chipman owned. I said, my God, the prison. Yamacraw left right of the prison to the beach. Elizabeth Estate from Yamacraw to Prince Charles. That's where they built all those little Elizabeth Estate homes. All that was my grandfather's land. From Yamacraw to Prince Charles. I saw a map also where off Carmichael Road, where the Q Club is right now, Southridge Plaza, all of that was Chipman's land. Out west by Fish Fry, that right there is 13 acres is Chipman land. In the back of that is 120 acres. Now Arawak Home is building houses on it. So if you could give it to Arawak Homes to build homes, can't you give Chipman something? In the west, by Travelers Rest, there was 13 acres. Hubert Ingram gave it to the Golden Girls and the Golden Boys. But I just want the people to realize that these members of Parliament are gaining grounds, I should say, or power by using Chipman land. And I'm quite sure everybody else is making money from it but the Chipman. But we still making it, and they wonder why. But that's our secret. But everybody, and I always went to the voice in the Bible, Saul, when David asked Jonathan, can anyone find any siblings that belongs to Jonathan? Because he was my friend. And they went and they found Jonathan's son. Is there anyone that I can give, that my friend Jonathan, anyone out there that I can give something to that belongs to Jonathan? They found Jonathan's son, and David restored him. And David didn't have to. David was king. This child was placed someplace, even forgot about his inheritance. But that's a man of God. Can someone in this leadership today be a David and just give us some of our inheritance back? We're not asking for all, because you all already used up 3/3. But there's still enough that you can do something for this Chipman family.
Howard Nelson amassed enormous tracts of land, namely 500 acres near Winton, 450 acres in Blue Hill Road, 200 acres in Nassau Village, 150 acres at Fox Hill, 120 acres in Chippenham, 60 acres in Abaco, approximately 1,500 acres of land gone.
In the later days, Becky retired from dancing, and her legs give away on her. She went to every doctor's in the Bahamas, Cuba, United States, everywhere to try to get strength in her leg. And everybody come up with the same thing. Lady, we can't find nothing wrong with you. So by laying down in the bed all the time, her blood clogged up on her, and she passed away. When she was in the hospital, I was scared to go up and most of the time and see her in the hospital. I always send the band up. I say, when they come down, I say, what she say? She say, everything is all right now. That means she was ready to go. She was okay. I miss her because she was a good woman.
Chippy and Becky shared many things in common, including 7 children and numerous grand and great-grands, some of whom tells delicious stories of their childhood with Chippy.
Growing up as a daughter of John Chippy Chipman, what can I say? It was not easy, but it was comfortable. My dad, he was a person, let's say he was a community person. He wasn't a person that you could go to and ask for advice. And he never bothered, like, he never made sure we did homework. He just was a community person. But to discipline you sometime, if he sees you doing something wrong, well, he never used a belt. My mother was the belt person. Well, he saved me many times. He would say, Becky, what you hitting the child for? But my dad, he would just give you one blow in the back of your head and send you spinning. But we never wanted to encounter that. So if we see he's coming and we're doing something wrong, of course, we stop.
The one time my dad did discipline me, I went on an adventure with one of my sisters, Naomi. She took me all over the place that day. Banana boat, everywhere in the day. And I must have gone from that morning till that evening. And when I walked in the kitchen, my mom and dad greeted me. Where were you? Well, I think my mom greeted me with, where were you? But my dad greeted me with a slap. And that was the one and only slap, but I never forget that slap because that was so hard. I never went anywhere with Naomi again.
Wait, you know what I just think of? You all remember when Chippy to tell Sean clean the skin and Sean say, boy, you ain't cleaning no skin? Chippy say, you disagree? You disagree you ain't cleaning no skin? Disagree this. And boy, that was a vet in the back at Sean there. He go and hold it on the clothes like, boy, hey, you ain't want to get hit with Dahan. Everyone, girls, the boys, sons, daughters, everyone feel Dahan and Chippy, even strangers. And if he hit Chippy, even with slap you with the goat skin. One time, I think he hit Johnny with the goat skin. He was cleaning the skin and Johnny disagreed. He said, first it was his favorite word. You disagree? Disagree this. But when Chippy, one time too, when we was going to Junkin' show, Johnny didn't want to go to Junkin' this New Year's Eve night. Chippy, I never see Rock go around the corner of the building and tell that The Chippy threw the rock around the building. He hurt his hand though. When he threw the rock, he hit it on the side of the house and messed up behind. Boy, the next day after the New Year's break, Johnny couldn't come here for weeks. He's looking for Johnny Vegas and mess up behind.
Daddy was a person, I guess he felt like he had to more or less be in charge of the whole community, okay? I wasn't special because I was his daughter. Anyone can just walk there and Chip, Goose, they had various names for him. And it fell, everyone just fell in place. It was their home.
My father was a good Samaritan to any and everyone. And it carried over with him. Today he is still a good Samaritan. He looks out for the underprivileged that hangs around him. That would be those who are less fortunate in many ways. He ensures that they have something to eat. And in growing up, I remember my father never ate a plate of meal without sharing it.
My earliest memory of Daddy performing was with my mother. We call her Mommy. And at this time, I went down by Daddy Doe's and I knew that Daddy Doe's were going on a job. So I hid in the drum in the car, but nobody knew I was in the drum at that time until they arrived at the hotel at the Emerald Beach or the Nassau Beach, one of them. And he was pulling out the drum and then he saw me. Then I came out, I was black with the dust from the drum, and I was black with just the cold that he had to heat the drum up. So all of that came on me when I came out of the drum, and my mother said, Mitzi, what am I going to do with you now? But listening to Daddy, even listening to Daddy perform was something special. It was a rhythm that my mother understood and his children understand what it feels like to hear that beat. And going and sitting on the porch, especially when there's Junkanoo time, when it's Christmas, then we used to sit on the porch to wait for Daddy group to come up to go to Bay Street. And those days they used to rush from home base to Bay Street. And sitting on that porch waiting for that Junkanoo group to come up. Daddy is coming up now, and we're just excited to know that now it's time for Bay Street and Daddy group is coming up. So that was an exciting time in my life as an early memory of Daddy. And I was like 6 or 7 at that time.
My dad wasn't one to discipline. I don't even recall ever being hit by my dad. And of course, he's my grandfather, but he's the only dad I know. But there was one time he asked me to clean up in front of the yard, and I gave some smart talk, back talk as we refer to it. And he just took off running after me. And when I could hear these feet, hitting the ground, running towards me, I just looked up and I just started running. And I realized he was gaining on me. So I had to do something smart. I ran straight for the garbage, and just as I reached the garbage, I jumped to the side, and he ran straight into the garbage. And then he went inside and told my grandmother, Becky, your granddaughter outrun me just now. But I had to run for my life because I couldn't let those goatskin hands hit me. I think that would have been the last of it there.
We ain't had much time to play. We had more time. Our life was entertainment off and on the stage. Our life was just entertainment straight through.
Yeah, daddies have all kinds of skins. Daddies have goat skin there, cow skin there, sheep skin there. And daddy ain't clean long enough. Clean that some more. I can go behind with the razor. And he have a technique with the razor. You see? He have that technique with the razor. That the skin don't even get damaged. He just have that same technique.
Yeah, he used to bend the razor a little bit, and when he shaved that drum, You see, if you hold the razor straight, you can cut the drum. So he used to put a little bend in it,
Yeah.
and he scraped the skin, everything come off of that.
Yeah. A wet skin. When I say on the wet skin, you gotta pull that. You gotta pull that, or you can use a stick. You know, you gotta let it seep in the lime. You know.
That was the key.
Trust me, it's a technique. And right now, if you have a one-on-one with him, where you have a drum making tutorial, I think the kids today, they'll be like,
no, I ain't touching that.
Seriously? But when you see the finished product, you'll be like, wow. And I get to cherish that.
My grandfather, I love Daddy a lot. You know, me, I ain't gonna be like me. Daddy, you get mad at Daddy sometimes just because of what Daddy would say. But that's Daddy, you know. And my kids now, you know, I'm a dancer. My mask for doing the open man is be right there, and I see my kids then pick it up and say, Daddy, look, and they trying to do the open man dance, even, and they don't even try. I know they don't get up right now and start doing that move, but my kids, them, so it's going now from Daddy to my mommy and my aunties to us, not going down to our kids.
It would have been about the late 60s when I came about, and Daddy would have been about 40 or in his early 40s, and so that's when I came to know my grandfather. And we had quite a creative cultural childhood, one that just is authentically Bahamian. I always tell people that my grandfather is the consummate Bahamian from a cultural perspective, from his dignity and pride in what he does. And so around that time, we were very young, but immediately integrated in this culture of junkanoo and dance, And so we knew a lot about the entertainment industry at that time, because from 2 years old, I could remember performing, 3 years old performing, and Dad would always put you up front, say, go, just as he beats the drum, you're just supposed to start moving. So, growing up with him was incredible, and it's, I had a great childhood experience, and, I always brag about it to some degree, because we grew up around a lot of people, because Daddy was a junkanoo icon as such. He sort of brought a lot of people together.
Yeah, so John is a joy. I have so many stories I could tell you about Sir John, but most of them I couldn't I couldn't tell you because they are wicked stories. One that I can tell you, we were traveling into Detroit one time on a Ministry of Tourism promotional tour with a group of junkanoos, and they used to have their costumes stored in this room in this hotel, and they kept getting a notice from the hotel that they should move their costumes, and they never moved their costumes. So when they finally went to get their costumes were not there. And that night we went into Chippy's room, all of the junkanoo fellas, to party the night before we went home. And in the middle of this room was this huge cardboard box. And we knew that the costumes were in it. And all night the fellas were trying to figure out how they could ask Chippy what was in the box, but no one ever did. And then when we came back to Nassau, one of the fellas came up to me and said he saw his costume out on Woods Rogers Wharf,
I remember also, the performances, we had formed a group, and he gave us the name Chip Chip Cheerios, and those were his grandchildren. And so many times what he would do is take all of us to perform for persons like Salinden and the members of Parliament. I remember performing on the Eastern Road for at various homes during different festivals festivities that they may be celebrating at that time. but he made sure that we were there and we performed, and we understand the value of work and dance. And with him, the thing, growing up with him, you kind of, as liberal as he might have been, as free as he might have been, there were some serious disciplines that I still carry with me today that I learned from my grandfather. The discipline of time and being on time, and you had to be there half an hour before the show started. It was the discipline of work. You had to work, and that's the way you eat, is what we were taught.
He was given the nickname Gander. Well, they actually call him Goosey Gander because he used to gamble. And, well, a lot of times, he would have 1 5-pound note and plenty $1 bills on top of that, or 4 shillings, whatever he had at the time. But if you have 4 shillings and he has a pocket full of 5-pound notes, he wants your 4 shilling. And he wanted to challenge you for that, so he starts to shoot dice for it. Well, he shoot dice a lot. And before the game is over, he's broke. And the fellow with the 4 shilling has all the 5-pound notes. So they say, there goes the goose again. And about my dad, what was so good about him? My mother, she gambled as well. But when she lost her money, you better clear the way, okay? Get out of the way. But my dad, once he lost his money, he lies down anywhere. He just lay there, grab his cigar, and he'll be stretched off sleeping. He just didn't get angry. He lost. And that was good about him. That was really a good thing about him. That was the vast difference of my mother and my dad.
Known as a heavyweight in the world of entertainment, Chippy always rose to the occasion. He, alongside Becky and the late Maureen Duvalier, polished the Junkanoo parades by bringing women to Rush for the first time on Bay Street. Being an innovator and creative thinker, he introduced many materials, such as glitter, to the parades, a gesture millennial groups have continued. There remains many layers to his legacy, as told by the ones who know him best.
In the good old days, I rushed against the Wally and the Saxon. I beat them and they beat me. But I was full of tricks. See, everybody build Christmas costume and take 4 days to build New Year's costume. So I know the Wally and the Saxon is my competition. So I lay out a Christmas, and when they build in their costume for the 4 days, I done ready long time for New Year's. So after Christmas I invite them and say, the Wally and the Saxon, come into the camp and come see you beating. And I put a licking on them. So I beat all in the past, I beat all in the future, and I enjoy my culture life.
There's a saying that Willa Francis is king of the Junkanoos, but step aside, Willa, for the king of Junkanoo, who's my dad. His contribution, I feel that during the years when Junkanoo was taboo, my father kept it alive. He was inventive with his designs. He was the first to introduce glitter and foil paper and gloss to Bay Street. I remember as a child, I was probably one of the first children to go to Bay Street. My father took out a group called Helen of Troy. I was the queen. At the time, I was only 6 years old. And the groups that my father presented then is what they are presenting now. So he was ahead of his time. And I remember him saying that the judges at that time didn't like the glitter and the gold and the silver because it was new. At that time, they only used fringe paper and newspaper. But my father came out with he was a revolutionary in terms of changing Junkanoo. Now, I'm not being biased, but my God, my dad had some serious. We had the Roman soldiers, the Greek, and these when you look at a Roman soldier, and this was done with crepe paper and a little foil. It looked as if it was the actual Roman soldiers. When Daddy put a group out there, it was really, what we want to say today, off the chain.
I remember the year that he introduced the glitter on Bay Street. It was such an overwhelming introduction and something new, innovative, creative, that they didn't place him or give him justice that year. But the following year, everybody caught on to that. And they actually won with it. So it was his way of, again, taking Junkanoo to another level. And I remember him going and introducing Junkanoo into the hotel. So that Junkanoo was not just a one time a year or twice a year thing. It was like all around, because every show, it was a Junkanoo show. And so it was exciting. When you hear a show coming up, you know Junkanoo was going to be in that. So you heard Junkanoo all the time. And then it just got better and better.
We had 3 women who decided to go on Bay Street. Maureen DeWallieu, Becky Chipman, and Naomi Taylor. And after they see these 3 women performing, the women's fetch into the group slowly. Well, now we got just as much women performing as what man. They come and join the group and enjoy themselves instead of standing on the side. As I say, they call me the Godfather, and I travel around the world representing the country, and I enjoy what I do. I make the drums every day when I am playing music. I make sure I keep Bahamas culture strong. The Chipmans, all my grandchildren, great-grandchildren, everybody into the music field, into the show business. Making sure we have the best entertainment in the Caribbean, that they can tell their friends and they come back and visit us again.
When you look at all of the lead drummers of all the major groups, they are students of Chippy. And you know, his wicked sense of humor, I've been around him many times when these lead drummers would come up to him and you know, talk about the times when they were in his yard. And he would turn to me every time and say, "Stan, this is the best student I ever had." And you know, he of course would say that to every drummer that came in his yard. "This is the best one to come out of my yard." You know, but his impact on the Junkanoo drum is just extraordinary.
I know now that his contribution is far beyond measures. When we look at the drum, I know that he was instrumental in having the gentleman who designed the first cowbell for Junkanoo. He was one of the vanguards in terms of building these massive costumes to depict the theme of the group. So when I look back and I think about his contributions as to what people have told me and what I've seen over the years, it's immeasurable. I don't think we can even put a measure on it. So I am grateful to what he has done, and I see it, you know, and everybody I think understands what John Chipman's contribution was, and that's why he has the level of respect that he does in the Junkanoo community.
In the good old days, tourists is to be scornful over the hill because the boats and the casino is to be closed down. So there's to come over the hill to enjoy themselves. I used to have a club full of tourists. I used to make sure they're happy that they'll go and tell their friends and bring their friends with them the next time to enjoy themselves in the Bahamas.
As he took us back in time, the feeling of nostalgia arose, and we danced in the vacant lot of which once stood the Cat and the Fiddle. He taught me a few moves and reminded me that he's forever young.
In future generation to come, I want my father to be remembered every time someone picks up a drum. Rather, just like now, everywhere I go, when I see a small child with a drum, and if you notice, the children, even when they're beating the drum, they're just so into that rhythm that they don't care what's around them. They just want to know they can beat that drum. So I just want him to be remembered as the father of the drums and the person that revolutionized the gombe drum.
When I think about how I'd like my grandfather to be remembered in future generations, I don't think about his art per se. I don't think about his contributions. I think more of relaying the message as to the type of man he was. A man with a great heart, a man that loved people, a man that cared about people. That's the first thing I want the future generations to remember, because I believe we get so distracted about what a person has contributed or how much money they have and what they own, and all of this is second, as I am reminded by a good friend of mine that it's the godly way of living that I would want my grandfather to be remembered for. The love thy neighbor attitude that he has, the caring and the kindness that he has for other people.
In future generations to come, I would like my father to be remembered for the sacrifices he has made to the school children, to anyone who would come who would want to learn how to beat the drum. He makes himself available as a good Samaritan. I would like for him to be remembered for who he really is. He is one in a million. There is no other like him. He has a personality all of his own, stress-free.
And only one person is the godfather of Jonkanoo culture is Chippy. They'll remember me. I know when you're dead, people forget you. You're gone. But they still remember Chippy. Because I set a pace in culture field.